Hi, I am Dr. Felice Gersh, an integrative OBGYN physician, and I have the pleasure of discussing with you today a very important topic. It's talking about menopause, a universal condition for women, and how to optimize health by using evidence-informed supplementation to augment optimizing lifestyle, and we'll talk about that, and hormone therapy when appropriate. Now, what happens when a woman goes into menopause? A lot. She has very significant effects throughout her body, but some of the ones that are so evident are brain fog and fatigue and sleep problems, mood changes, and others we're going to discuss. And so to optimize health, we need to use every tool in our toolbox. That's why in my particular experience as an integrative physician, I have what I call an expanded therapeutic toolbox. So I have more, I say, tools that I can implement to optimize the health of my women patients and of myself. So let's talk a bit about menopause. Well, menopause is about the ovaries, the loss of ovarian hormone production, particularly estradiol and progesterone. Every woman will go through menopause. It's only a question of when, not if. In the US, the typical age is around 51, but it's considered normal to be between 45 and 55. Early menopause is 40 up to 45, late is after 55, and premature is before the age of 40. Now, what happens is a gradual change in ovarian hormone production. Menopause is not like crossing a finish line, it's really a process. So I advocate for being very proactive. So the lifestyle changes or optimization and use of supplementation to augment all of our other hopefully beneficial lifestyle choices and hormones when appropriate, starting in the perimenopause, and of course, even before, because some of the things I'm going to talk about start way before, like in the 30s even. Things are happening gradually. This process called aging kind of sneaks up on us and becomes really evident as we transition into menopause. Well, I'm going to talk about 6 supplements that I feel are really optimal for every woman going into menopause to take, in addition to all the other things that they can do. So supplements, that word is very applicable. It's about augmenting. It's not a cure in itself. They are very important adjuncts to optimizing the medical probability of healthy longevity. Now, this particular recording is sponsored by a very wonderful company I work with called Wonderfeel. But I want you to know that all of the products I selected, the supplements, were my choice, and all the content is of my own creation. Now, in getting back to menopause, with the loss of these vital, I call them now life hormones, every organ system in the body is affected. So you're going to have changes in your cardiovascular health and function, brain function, that includes cognition and mood. You're going to have changes in sleep and in energy production. Not only that, your skin will change. Every woman notices that when she looks in the mirror. So basically, there are changes that affect every organ system when these vital life hormones decrease and eventually are not produced at all by the ovaries. And so what can we do? Well, one thing is healthy lifestyle. So that means eating an optimized nutritional diet, getting fitness, everything you can do to optimize sleep, avoidance of chemical toxicants, pollution, plastics, all the kinds of chemicals involved in pesticides, herbicides, ultra-processed food, and so on. And you want to control stress as much as possible. And as I mentioned, I'm a very strong advocate for hormone therapy. But here's the reality. No matter how we give hormones in the menopause, it's not going to be the same as having a replacement of 21-year-old ovaries. So we're never going to replicate the exact hormonal environment of a healthy 21-year-old. So therefore, we have to recognize the limitations of each and every one of these facets, lifestyle plus hormones, and that's where the supplementation comes in. So I'm going to go one by one through 6 supplements that I feel are really important and will substantially improve your chances of feeling great and having healthy longevity. So what's the first supplement? It's NMN. It is a precursor molecule of a very critical coenzyme in the body called NAD. The brand I use is Wonderfeel's product, Youngr NMN. And I'll tell you why. NMN is a vital supplement for optimizing health through the menopause and perimenopausal years. It turns out that NAD is a coenzyme involved in over 500 enzymatic reactions in the body that involve cellular health and DNA stability and health as well. So if you don't have any NAD in your body, it's so critical, you would be dead like in 10 seconds. But here's the problem. This vital coenzyme, NAD, declines as we age. In fact, it's already declining in our 30s. By the time we get into menopause, it is definitely not at optimal levels. But we have a wonderful way of replenishing our NAD supplies, and that is by taking a precursor molecule, the NMN. So why can't we just take NAD? Well, NAD cannot get into cells. That's a problem. It's not going to do anything if it can't enter the cells. But a precursor, NMN, can join with, like we call them, like receptors, sites on the membrane of the cells, and then it's transported into the cell where it is converted into that critically important NAD. Now, what does NAD do in the body, and what happens if we don't have enough of it, and why do I want to replenish it with NMN? Well, without adequate NAD, you literally cannot have optimal mitochondrial function, the creators of energy. So without adequate energy, what are you going to feel like? Well, how about very tired? How about brain fog? Because you need energy in your brain. How about mood changes where you have more anxiety and depression? How about muscle fatigue where you just are weaker? All of those things are vital for healthy longevity. And without adequate amounts of NAD, those are the symptoms that women in menopause will face. So many women in menopause do have brain fog and fatigue and muscle weakness. And what else? Well, it turns out that NAD is critically important for healthy metabolic health. That includes cardiovascular health. And when you have adequate NAD or replace it when you have adequate intake of NMN, then you will have proper vascular health. You'll have dilation of your arteries, healthy arteries. You will have energy for your heart. One of the conditions that women in menopause often will have that's often very ignored, it's mild diastolic dysfunction, which is basically an energy deficient or insufficient heart, that it doesn't have the proper amount of energy to open up and refill with blood properly. And that's called mild diastolic dysfunction. It's been shown that NMN, by replenishing NAD, can help to restore healthy energy in the heart. So this is all really, really important. And what about insulin? Well, as women go into menopause, they often develop insulin dysregulation in terms of insulin less sensitivity. So basically, it's not working as well. It turns out that NMN, by replenishing NAD, can actually improve insulin sensitivity. And that can help as well with weight. It turns out that taking NMN supplements can improve weight control because we know women in menopause tend to gain a lot of belly fat, visceral fat, and that can be aided with NMN. We also have skin beauty. Well, it turns out that taking NMN can help to reduce wrinkles, improve skin elasticity. These are incredibly important things. What else does NMN do by increasing NAD? Well, NAD is vital for DNA stability. And if we have DNA damage, that's a very big problem. So NMN, by replenishing NAD, can help to restore and maintain the DNA stability. So that is another critical issue. Now, why do I choose one supplement over another? I look at many, and I'm not saying that there's one that is only good, that there can be many that are good, but I'm going to tell you the ones that I particularly like to choose. The one from Wonderfeel, the Youngr NMN, I choose because it has a well-studied dose. Each of the tabs have 450 milligrams. If you take 2 in the morning, that's the best way to take it. You could take 1 twice a day, 1 in the morning, 1 later in the day, but it's recommended if you can to take 2 in the morning. That's 900 milligrams. That's a well-studied optimal dose of NMN. What else is included? Antioxidants and polyphenols. And that's really important to lower inflammation. Because if you have a lot of inflammation, which tends to occur as we age and in menopause, inflammation can create a certain reaction in the body involving white blood cells where they make an enzyme that can actually destroy NAD as quickly as it's made. So that's a real problem. If you get NAD, but it's immediately destroyed by an enzyme that's made by white blood cells, then you're not getting where you want to go. That's the purpose of including these specially chosen antioxidants and polyphenols that are added to the tab so that you actually can fight down, reduce the inflammation so that you will not have the NAD that's created from the NMN be destroyed. So that's my supplement number 1. My next supplement that I want to promote if you're perimenopausal or menopausal is an excellent multivitamin. It's interesting how often multivitamins are forgotten with all the benefits that they can provide. It's really challenging for me to tell my patients to take individual vitamins and minerals. It becomes overwhelming. So a really great combination of all of the above is actually very data-driven as beneficial. And women in the menopausal years and the transition years often will have changes in appetite. They often have changes in their digestion. And it's really important that you have the vital vitamins and minerals that are necessary to sustain and function throughout your body. And every cell needs these vital micronutrients. So let's talk about some of the vitamins that you should be sure to have in your multivitamin. Well, one is vitamin D. Now, you can take additional vitamin D, but many vitamin tablets will give you about 1,000 IU of vitamin D. That's a very good baseline amount. Vitamin D is involved in so many functions in the body. That would be an hour lecture in itself. It's involved in inflammation control. It's involved in brain health, energy production, immune function, and so many things. So you need a lot of supplementation. Most of us do with vitamin D on a regular basis because most of us are just not getting enough sun exposure to our skin, and therefore some additional supplementation with vitamin D is really important. What else should you look for in a multivitamin? Well, you want to have some antioxidants. So what are the antioxidant vitamins? There's vitamin A. Now, in a multivitamin, you may find some preformed vitamin A or vitamin A as its precursor, the carotenoids. Both of those are fine, and sometimes you have one or the other. Vitamin A is so important for eye health, for immune health, for gut health. Skin, as I mentioned, is so overwhelmingly dependent. Vision. So vitamin A is a fat-soluble vitamin that is really crucial to have in your body, and many of us are not getting enough from our diets. Another antioxidant is vitamin C. That's a water-soluble vitamin, so we need to get it in every day. We don't store it like we do the fat-soluble vitamins. It's a very potent antioxidant, so it helps with our immune system to help fight off infections. It's also really important for healing, for skin health, for producing collagen. So vitamin C has a wide array of functions in the body, and many of us also are not getting enough from our diet. And what about the wide array of B vitamins? Well, I talk often about the importance of all the B vitamins, but let it suffice for this little talk that B vitamins are critically important for brain health, for mood, for making neurotransmitters, for detoxification, for optimizing the production of blood as an anti-inflammatory as well, and also for stabilization of our DNA, for proper fertility for younger women, but in older women, for just maintaining overall metabolic health, brain health, cardiovascular health, neurotransmitter production, energy, and for like B6, for example, is critically important for proper function of estrogen receptors. Many of you know that B6 is very important for mood, as is B12. We need to have adequate amounts, which we sometimes don't get. B12, for example, almost all of it comes in our diet from eating red meat. And most of us are not eating a lot of red meat. So making sure that we get supplementation with B12 is so important. And often you'll have trace minerals that will come along for the ride. We do need trace minerals like zinc and selenium for proper thyroid function and immune function and many other functions in the body. So I strongly advocate for taking a high quality multivitamin every day. Some multivitamins will also include a few polyphenols that come from, for example, berries and other fruits and vegetables. They may even have some herbals. So look at the label to see what's in it and see if that's what you're looking for. Multivitamins can come where you take one a day or you take more than one a day. In my office, I use a wide array of multivitamins. I use, for example, one multivitamin that comes from pure encapsulations. I use other multivitamins that come from other high-quality manufacturers, such as Integrative Therapeutics, Metagenics, Designs for Health, and others. So look for a high quality, and when you get your multivitamin, I always recommend that it has methylated B vitamins. So it would be like methylcobalamin, not cyanocobalamin. It would have methylfolate, not folic acid, because many people have variants of the MTHFR gene. That's an enzyme that is involved in many critical functions, and they do not methylate as well as would be optimal, and therefore having pre-methylated B vitamins, B12 and folate is really important. So look for those things in the multivitamins that you purchase. I also recommend that you take your multivitamin with food, because that's how we always get our vitamins and minerals, from food. So take it with food. I recommend, if you can, take it with breakfast. The next supplement that I would like to advocate for is omega-3. Now, I'm sure all of you have heard of omega-3. Sometimes it's called fish oil, but of course, fish oil is the source of omega-3. It's not omega-3. There are other sources of omega-3, such as krill, but I usually recommend omega-3 from fish. And I'll tell you why. Krill either are farmed, they're like little miniature versions of shrimp, and they're usually farmed in conditions that are not optimal, with a lot of disinfectants used in their cages to try to control lice. And if you get it, they're normally dwellers of the ocean bottom, and you do not want to have the ocean floor swept up to get krill because you're going to damage the ecosystem of the ocean. So I usually recommend that the source of the omega-3 be from wild fish or quality farmed fish that have a lot of omega-3, such as sardines. Now, why do I advocate for omega-3? Well, omega-3 is a very important fatty acid which we cannot make. So we call it an essential fatty acid. Humans have to consume omega-3 because EPA and DHA, which are the critical omega-3s that we need, and I'm going to tell you why we need them, we cannot make, at least not to any substantial degree. For example, other animals like cows can make those omega-3s, EPA and DHA, from eating grass, but humans cannot. We can make a little bit from, but just a very little bit that we can make from eating things like flaxseed oil, but that is not ideal. So it's from fish, okay? So what if you're a vegan? Well, you can get some if you get it sourced from algae, but you have to take a lot. So that's one of the unfortunate negatives of being a vegan, is that if you won't take omega-3 from fish oil, you have to use it from algae, which is okay, but it's really important that vegans do supplement with the algae-based omega-3. Now, what if you're going to take it from fish oil? People ask me all the time, well, what about the mercury? Well, there's no high-quality fish oil derived omega-3 that is going to have mercury in it. That's what's tested. But of course, you do want a really high quality manufacturer of omega-3, which I'll talk about. There's many, I'll just mention a couple, because you definitely want to have a really high quality omega-3 because you don't want it to be rancid. And of course, oils can become rancid. So why would I recommend omega-3? Well, it's really important for cardiovascular health and brain health. Now, we know that when women are transitioning into menopause and thereafter, they have problems with both. Women in menopause suffer from, unfortunately, high rates of mood disorders, anxiety, and depression. And of course, women have a significantly higher incidence of dementia compared to men, and cardiovascular disease, vascular problems, hypertension, high triglycerides really are very prevalent problems in menopausal women, and omega-3s are beneficial for all of these situations. It turns out that omega-3s can help with mood, can be very substantially beneficial to lower the incidence of anxiety and depression, probably through the EPA portion. And cognition is very critical to having a quality life, and probably the DHA part of omega-3s, which is always supplemented in pregnant women to help brain development in the developing fetus. Well, as adult women going through menopause, our brains take a bit of a trauma in terms of loss of these vital life hormones, estradiol and progesterone. And it turns out that taking omega-3 can improve our cognitive function. Now, it's also very important, as I mentioned, for vascular health. It helps arteries to be healthier. Vascular disease is also highly prevalent in women after menopause. Triglycerides go up, and triglycerides are very harmful when they're too high. They're fats, and they can get stored in the liver. That's very unhealthy. It turns out that omega-3 can lower triglyceride levels. So what do I recommend for dosage? I recommend that you take 1 to 2 grams a day. If you are eating a fair amount of fish that has omega-3, that would be like sardines or wild salmon, you may be just fine by taking 1 gram a day. Now, there are also uses for much higher doses, but those should be always prescribed by a physician. So you don't want to take on your own more than 1 or 2 grams a day. Otherwise, you should really check with your physician about that. And it's very important that you take it with food because that's how it always would come. It comes with food. So I recommend that you take it with one of your meals and that you take it most every day. Try to take it every day. Now, what if you say, oh, I don't like taking omega-3 because it makes me have like fish burp? Well, a good quality one is less likely to do that. And one of the tricks that I learned is that if you freeze it, if you actually tend to get that a lot, if you freeze the omega-3, the little gel caps, if you freeze it and swallow it frozen, it will get through past your stomach into the small intestine without giving you that fishy burp that some people feel that they get and they do not like. So it's really important to include omega-3. Now, I often use the one from Pure Encapsulations, which is omega-1. It has 1 gram in every gel cap, but there are other wonderful companies that make omega-3s. Nordic Naturals is a great company, Integrative Therapeutics, Metagenics. So look at all of the high quality brands that are out there. Take it every day for brain health and mood and for cardiovascular health. So that's my next suggestion, omega-3. My fourth supplement that I recommend for all of my peri and menopausal women is a Urolithin A product. So what is Urolithin A? It's actually a product made naturally, but only a small percentage of people actually make it from a polyphenol called ellagic acid. And it's ellagic acid converted into urolithin A by the gut microbial population. But as I mentioned, only a minority of people actually have the proper gut microbiome to convert ellagic acid into urolithin A. Now, where does ellagic acid come from? From a variety of fruits and vegetables and nuts. And the most famous one is pomegranates. But in reality, how many pomegranates do you eat on a regular basis? And as I said, in all medical probability, you can't even turn it into urolithin A. Now, why do I advocate for the use of urolithin A? Well, it's quite an amazing molecule. It's derived from a phytoestrogen, as I mentioned. That's ellagic acid is a phytoestrogen, and it works as a mitochondrial enhancer. That's how I think of it. Mitochondria, the energy producers of the cells. That's why they call them the powerhouses of the cells. And in order to have enough mitochondria, you need to have estrogen. Well, no matter what we do in menopause, you're never going to have the same estrogen levels as you had in the same actual rhythms and so on as when you were 21. And so this amazing polyphenol-derived molecule, urolithin A, has many of the same benefits, only really magnified. So urolithin A is a mitochondrial booster or enhancer. It promotes mitophagy. Mitophagy is where mitochondria can replicate themselves, so you have more mitochondria, and that they actually sort of internally clean house, so you have better functioning mitochondria. Mitochondria are everywhere. Now, what organs need the most mitochondrial produced energy? Well, the brain, the heart, muscles. These are some of the areas where urolithin A really shines, and menopausal women really need this because without adequate estrogen, their mitochondria are not going to work optimally. That's not if or possible. That's a fact. So it turns out that urolithin A has been well studied for a variety of different uses and benefits. In terms of muscle, which is so obvious because muscle needs energy, turns out that urolithin A products are great for muscle function, so muscle recovery and muscle production. We know how important muscle is as we age. Without enough muscle, which is called sarcopenia, you have much higher mortality rates. In fact, frailty syndrome is a high mortality risk. And without adequate estrogen as women age, the muscle actually becomes weaker and there's less of it. So we need everything we can to boost muscle function and muscle production. Now, what about the brain? I mentioned the brain needs a lot of energy from mitochondria. So there's also data that the urolithin A can actually help with energy in the brain for brain function. So it's actually been shown to help with cognition. And there is some research going on for help in terms of women who develop Alzheimer's disease and other causes of cognitive decline. So this is like really, really important. And what about burning fat? Okay, that's what mitochondria do. So it turns out that women in menopause have very high rates of weight gain and fat around the middle, the visceral fat. Well, urolithin A can also help with weight control and can help promote weight loss. So every woman in menopause needs these benefits. Who doesn't need a better brain, better muscle, better weight, better mood? These are really important functions that urolithin A can have in the body. Now, the usual dose for when you need to really get things going would be 1,000 milligrams a day. And if you are doing well, you could take 500 milligrams a day. There are two main companies that make urolithin A that I utilize in my practice. One is from Timeline called MitoPure, and the other is from Pure Encapsulations called Renewal. And they both have wonderful urolithin A, and the Renewal has some other ingredients as well. They're both fantastic. So I highly recommend that you incorporate, if you're in menopause or perimenopause, that you incorporate a urolithin A product in your supplemental regimen. My fifth supplement that I recommend to all of my peri and menopausal patients is magnesium. I have given entire hour-long lectures on magnesium. It is critically involved in over 700 reactions in the body. When I first started researching magnesium, it was 300. Now we know it's over 700 reactions. So of course, every organ system is involved with the need for magnesium. And it's been estimated that 80% or more of women in menopause have insufficient amounts of magnesium coming in through their diet. So magnesium supplementation, to me, is essential. There's not a single patient that comes through my office that I don't recommend magnesium. So what are some of the areas that magnesium shines in terms of improving the functions? So how about the brain? It turns out that magnesium is great for calming, reducing anxiety, improving mood, and as an ancillary to that, improving sleep, having a sense of calmness, allowing and welcoming sleep. Well, what about the heart? Women in menopause do have significant cardiovascular issues like palpitations and hypertension. So it turns out that magnesium is really important and beneficial for the conduction system of the heart and can help reduce the very commonly experienced palpitations that peri and menopausal women experience. And magnesium is really important for vascular health. It helps keep arteries dilated and working properly. It helps reduce hypertension. And what about glucose transport and diabetes and insulin resistance? Well, magnesium is very beneficial for insulin function. So it's very, very important to have magnesium to lower the risk of insulin resistance. And what about muscle health? Yes, muscles really depend on magnesium. Calcium transport, for example, many women in menopause will get muscle spasms and cramps. Well, magnesium is very beneficial to lower the incidence of cramping of all the different muscles, in particular in the lower leg and the calf muscles, which are so common in women in menopause. So what about bones? It turns out that you absolutely need an adequate amount of magnesium for proper bone development and function. Magnesium is very important for calcium function and for calcium deposits in the bone. So you need to have magnesium in order for proper bone function. So magnesium is simply not optional for all aspects of brain health, mood, cognition, sleep, bone health, muscle health, cardiovascular health. It's such an amazing mineral. Now, one of the things I didn't mention as far as mood is magnesium is essential for production of neurotransmitters like serotonin, which is like the feel good, feel happy neurotransmitter. As I mentioned, magnesium is critical for over 700 reactions in the body. That's why it's such a critically necessary mineral that most women are deficient in. Now, what type of magnesium should you take? Well, there's several, and they're all very good, but they do have their own little niches. So say cognitive function is your main issue. Well, some people do recommend magnesium threonate. Okay, so that's one. What if just general metabolic health, vascular health, heart health, brain health, glucose regulation, muscle health? You want all these general things I talked about. Well, the most effective one that's recommended is magnesium glycinate. It's well absorbed. Many women in menopause also suffer from constipation. Now, constipation is best served by taking magnesium citrate. And you can take a blend. I have patients that take magnesium citrate in the morning and then magnesium glycinate in the evening. They may take a single dose now and again of the threonate magnesium. There's no harm in mixing and matching depending on your own unique needs or your patient's needs. Now, what about dosing? Well, in an emergency, what's an emergency? Like a really bad headache. You can take like a one-time dose of up to 700 milligrams of magnesium glycinate. By the way, I didn't mention that it can help abort migraines or other types of headaches. So what about for routine daily use? I recommend a dose of about 400 milligrams a day. If you eat a lot of magnesium-containing foods like pumpkin seeds, then you may do fine to take, say, 200 or 300 milligrams of magnesium. Now, if you take the citrate form, I didn't mention this, it is not well absorbed. That's why it's best for constipation. The glycinate is better absorbed, so it gets higher systemic levels. So keep that in mind. Now, what about magnesium oxide? I didn't mention that one. That one is purely a laxative. It doesn't get absorbed at all. So when you see a magnesium that says magnesium oxide, know that is not going to do all the things that I mentioned in the body. It's primarily going to be a laxative, which for some people is a priority. So keep that in mind, that these different molecules of magnesium will have different effects in the body. Now, there are many, many excellent companies that make magnesium products. So like look around, but make sure it's a reputable company that meets the high standards of production quality. The sixth and last of the supplements that I am recommending pretty universally is Rhodiola rosea. It is an herb that is so beneficial to women in menopause because it helps with improving focus and energy, stamina, mood. So many women in menopause say, I have brain fog, I have low energy, I can't focus, and I have mood problems. I have depression, low mood, I have anxiety. Well, rhodiola helps with all of that. In fact, interestingly, there have been studies in the past that showed students who took rhodiola scored better on their tests. It's been shown to help with ADHD. It helps with, like I said, focus. So rhodiola is a wonderful herb for just increasing energy, stamina, brain focus, and mood. I mean, it covers that entire gamut of issues faced by so many menopausal women. So how do I dose it? Usually 500 milligrams, and it's sort of to the person's own needs and how they respond. I don't usually recommend that people take it every day. I use it as PRN, as needed. I always keep a container of rhodiola in my personal little drawer in my little room that I call my own here at my office. And if I'm feeling tired, like I have a 3 o'clock in the afternoon slump, or maybe I didn't get enough sleep that night, I'll take one or two. I usually tell people to start low, go slow, take one in the morning or one in the early mid afternoon, depending on their energy level. If they need to, they could take one twice a day. And the most I would ever recommend would be two in the morning and two in the afternoon. But go slow, see what your tolerance is, see what you need, and just be careful. If you're on any drugs for mood, any kind of antidepressant or anti-anxiety medication, please check with your healthcare provider because, we don't want any potential interactions with anything else that you may be taking. So I call herbals green medicine. They're from a natural source, but they're designed to create an effect just like a drug. So I do want you to be aware that there are always some potentials for interactions with other drugs, pharmaceutical drugs, or even other green medicine herbal drugs. So consider that. It's not a nutrient, it's not derived from food, it's an herbal, okay? So that's really important to know. Now that you know my 6 favorite supplements for women in perimenopause and menopause, how shall we put this all together? Well, remember I mentioned in the very beginning, supplements are adjuncts to lifestyle, which includes how you move, what you eat, how you sleep, avoidance or exposures to chemical toxicants, and stress. So you need to focus on all of the lifestyle issues. That is foundational. So lifestyle first, hormones kind of on the same level, and then comes supplementation. Think of it as a layering thing. Start with the vital nutrients in terms of supplementation. A multivitamin, so you get the essential vitamins and trace minerals. Omega-3, a vital essential fatty acid that we need to consume in order to be optimally healthy. And then we always want to add magnesium because you can never get enough magnesium from a multivitamin. Then we look at mitochondrial health, cardiovascular health, cellular function, and energy for optimized metabolism. And that's where NMN comes in, and also Urolithin A, two amazing adjuncts for energy, cellular health, optimization. And then we look at herbals. And one of the ones I consider really foundational and wonderful for menopausal women is Rhodiola rosea, because that is so important for energy, stamina, mood, and focus. So should you start all of them at once? Probably not, because you never know how you're going to react to particular products and how things will interact. So start with the foundational 3, the multivitamin, omega-3, and magnesium. And then layer in the others and do them maybe a couple of weeks or a month apart and then see how you feel and so on. Don't hesitate to discuss anything that you take with your healthcare provider and put feedback in the comments. Share this information with other women, friends, colleagues who are perimenopausal or menopausal, so they too can optimize their chances, the medical probability of healthy longevity. Thanks so much.